finger at us. Oh, shit. Now, hey, Pops.
Hi folks, and welcome back to another episode from ITG Airsoft in the Garage Airsoft. What are we talking about today? Well, as the short that I posted up a wee while ago will have alluded to, we are talking about this, the Colt 1911. And obviously it's Airsoft equivalents. Just for disclaimer purposes, for all the lovely people at YouTube, this is obviously, of course, an airsoft pistol. This is nothing more than an elaborate toy. There are no real firearms featured in this. Well, this isn't a real firearm. There might be some stills of some 1911s, but this is not a real firearm. So, 1911, iconic arms in airsoft. Anyone that's dabbled in any sort of airsoft is bound to have seen one of these before, or something that looks similar to these. The Colt 1911 pistol. Now, real steel version, a little bit of history, obviously. 1911, year it was first adopted by the United States military and subsequently adopted as the M1911, way back in 1911. So not well before, but 3 years before the First World War, the year before the Titanic sank. This pistol was rolling off the production lines into the hands of the US Armed Forces, predominantly the US Army, having been adopted, as I said, in 1911. As you can see from the slide there, original patented concepts of this started in 1897, remastered in 1902, 1905, and then obviously in 1911. And then now you'll be thinking, wait, hang on a minute, 1911, this says 1913 on it. Well, this is actually a model of the M1911A1. The A1 is the slightly adapted version of the original M1911. Key features that were different from the original production models. These indentations here behind the trigger, these were added beforehand. This was just a solid curved over metal part here. The wood diamond pattern grips, similar to what these ones here are like, these were replaced with just standard plastic grips. And on the back, the handguard, the flat mainspring housing, which was popular with the original 1911 version, was replaced with a slightly arched version to make it slightly more comfortable in the shooter's hand. The tang here at the back was enlarged to prevent hammer bite. You're obviously holding the pistol. If you're quite up high in here, there's a chance that the hammer would come back and nip the web of your hand. So that was increased, basically just to kind of make the gun that little bit more comfortable for the shooter to use. There wasn't really anything that was changed about it to accommodate any mass production or anything like that. It was still made with the same materials. The only thing that was maybe slightly changed was obviously the wood grips were replaced for plastic ones, and then that was brought on obviously the M1911A1, which is probably the more popular seen military version, and that came in around about, I think it was about 1934. Hence why this trait here has got 1913 labeled, because this is obviously based on the A1 as opposed to the original 1911 concept. So 1911, well over 100 years of service, 113 years as of this year, and it's still very popular. It's still a very, very popular pistol. As I said, adopted by the US military, and this was carried as the sidearm of the US military right up until it started to be phased out in the mid 1980s, and in some instances many units kept a hold of it. Predominantly elements of the US Marine Corps, who still now use not obviously a Colt 1911, but a variation of the 1911 45 caliber handgun, the Kimber Warrior, I believe they're now carrying. And there's also some elements of the American Special Forces that preferred a 1911 instead of the 9mm Beretta replacement that was brought in the mid 80s. It was predominantly down to kind of shooter's choice, with this being a single action pistol, meaning that in order to fire off the action, it doesn't have a double action. You have to manually cock the hammer in order for it to fire. Meant the trigger was actually really quite crisp, really quite smooth. A lot of people like these for the really quite crisp and smooth triggers. And also the immediate action procedure. If you've got a stoppage on the pistol, is to tap the magazine back in and rack the slide and then try to shoot again. Now the thing with the Beretta is they have a slide mounted safety in around about here, and there was an element of kind of like, oh, if I'm sort of tapping and racking as it was known, there was actually a possibility that you could then actually engage the slide mounted safety, so as you went to fire your shot, your pistol would actually be on safe, which would then require some faffing about to disengage it. So that was one of the things that people didn't particularly like. Particular units such as American Special Forces that would actually quite be potentially using a handgun probably more readily than your average troops. So that's why they tended to favour the 1911, which wasn't a big massive issue. There was still a school of thought at the time of teaching double taps as a method of taking down targets. So even though this was a limited capacity magazine, carries only 7 rounds, 45 ACP, you can get slightly enlarged magazines, but then they start becoming cumbersome. So you're only really talking between 7 and 10 rounds compared to the 15 plus potential rounds you could carry with a 9mm pistol. But as I said, back then in the kind of like early 2000s, the first start of the GWOT, as the Americans like to call it, the global war on terrorism, they were still looking, or they still trained for double taps, taking 2 rounds to take down your target. So something that fired, that had a capacity of 7 to 10 rounds was perfectly fine. 2 rounds was at that time deemed sufficient to be taking your target down. However, as the battlefield started to change, we started to look at situations involving suicide bombers. Basically, the mentality was that you couldn't take that risk that your target was neutralised with just 2 shots, and therefore the training was changed to adopt, as the Americans like to call, the P for plenty. So they just keep putting rounds into the target until they were convinced that the target was neutralised. So that was when things like this started to be kind of phased out, and more popular 9mm pistols with higher capacity magazines were starting to come into popularity, such as Glock variations and so on and so forth. There is quite an interesting little video on YouTube about a former American Green Beret Special Forces operative who confirms that these were actually still being used. In fact, he actually carried one on his last tour of Afghanistan in 2015, just purely because it was effectively the pistol that he'd had through his service. He was very comfortable with it, he was enjoyed shooting it, he could trust in its reliability. So they've had a very, very, very long and illustrious past, obviously carried by the American forces throughout World War One and World War Two. World War Two is probably where they've seen most kind of use and popularity through the resurgence of World War Two based films, TV programs and video games over the last 20-25 years or so. But it continued on its service. It started to trickle feed into, there were some British elements and Commonwealth elements that started to carry the 1911 pistol towards the end of the war, and then that subsequently got replaced by the Browning high powered. But every American conflict over the last 100 plus years, Korea, Vietnam, the first Gulf War, second Gulf War, 1911s has been there, and as such it has become a very, very, very popular pistol. And as I said, not just World War II based programs, but in film, television and video games. It's a very, very popular pistol. Even in the last 25 years or so, Call of Duty, Captain Price, his pistol of choice is a Colt 45, or certainly a Colt 45 variant. So they're very, very popular, and that is also reflected in their civilian use as well. The Real Steel World is a very, very, very popular pistol. It's got a very, as I talked before, very slick, very crisp trigger. The mechanism of it is very refined. In fact, a lot of modern automatics, Glocks, SIGs, Berettas, blah, 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 use a very similar pivoting barrel system, which adds to the accuracy of the pistol. And obviously, because it's quite a large frame pistol, it's obviously full metal, so it's quite weighty, but with it being a single stack magazine, it's quite a slim profile pistol. Sights aren't anything too overly massive or garish or anything like that. Because of the weight, it handles the recoil of the big 45 caliber slug really quite well. So they are actually a really popular pistol for it's home defence and stuff like that in the US and all that. So yeah, even 113 years on, they're still going very, very strong. And as such, this is reflected in their airsoft capacities. I very much like the Glock series of pistols. You would probably be hard pressed to find any airsoft company really, the big ones, the main kind of like the likes of your Tokyo Marui, WE, and all this sorts of stuff. The ones that aren't particularly specialised in necessarily what kind of airsoft weapons they do, will do a 1911 of some description. I can almost guarantee it. Whether it be spring powered, gas powered, electric powered, CO2 powered. I'm pretty sure you search about, it'll not be too hard to find a 1911 variant, whether it be the old traditional style looking like this or something slightly more tactical with maybe forward mounted rails. They are out there. They are very adaptable. Probably one of the most adaptable airsoft pistols out on the market is probably the Tokyo Marui High Kappa, or the High Kappa style pistol, and it is a 45, or sorry, a Colt 45 based design. And even looking into sort of more modern stuff like the Taran Tactical pistols that become really quite popular off the back of the John Wick movies, a lot of them are actually based around the base design of the Colt 1911, and as such, they're really quite popular. They're not, I'd say, as popular as Glocks, but I dare say, have a search about it, any airsoft game, you'll probably find 2 or 3 people are carrying some sort of 1911 style variant. As for me, I don't know. I've just absolutely loved the 1911. I don't know if it's just because I was effectively brought up on World War II movies as a kid or what, but this has always just been one of my favourite pistols. There's just something about the aesthetics of it that I just absolutely love. It is, I'd go as far as to say my favourite style of pistol. Ever since I first got into airsoft, I mean, I've passed through God knows how many hundreds of different airsoft weapons, but I'm never without a 1911 of some shape or form. This is my latest favourite one. This is a KWC CO2 powered 1911, manufactured by Cybergun, Colt licensed, hence why it's got the markings on the slide. I like the old traditional 1911A1 styling to it. You don't seem to get nobody's actually made an original 1911 style, as I'm suggesting, with the original design, with these obviously without these cut into them, or with the flat mainspring housing. I've had to kind of put this one together. As I said, it is an M1911A1 base, so I've actually swapped out the mainspring housing to give it this flat mainspring one, and these grips have come off another pistol just to give it that original 1911 look. But yeah, predominantly, if you were to look at any of the sort of the World War II military style, or sort of the older military style 1911s, they will be 1911A1s. Very, very rare to come across a 1911 original. I don't know why. They're just not out there. But this is 1911A1s, very, very, very popular. And as I said, this is definitely my favourite pistol. CO2 powered, so yeah, it is actually really quite punchy, but you can easily fit an end pass valve into the chamber to reduce that gas flow, to bring the FPS down, to make it site legal. As I said, original 1911's standard magazine capacity was 7 rounds in the magazine. These can usually easily fit well beyond that. There is a couple of premium brand 1911s coming onto the, not coming along, they've been kicking about for a while in the airsoft market, that do like full steel slide frame and all that sorts of stuff. There's the one just now where the magazine capacity is only 7 rounds, just to give it that slightly more authentic feel. But would I recommend them? Are they good pistols? I've found that they are very good. They're usually really quite accurate. As I said, they've got, now you don't have to necessarily get a full metal one. you do get ABS plastic ones, but I like the full metal version. Just feels a bit sturdy. So in comparison to some other things, yeah, it's a little bit on the weighty side, but I find it very accurate. It's very easy to use. It's got a pretty straightforward slide safety there. There is the back strap has to be depressed. This actually works as a secondary safety, so that has to be depressed in order for the hammer attach to be pulled. So, but it's not anything overly complex. You don't have to squeeze it in too hard or anything like that. So it's a really quite simple, effective pistol to use. So yeah, if somebody was looking for something full steel with a bit of attitude about it, then yeah, I would strongly suggest the 1911. There's also an amazing timeless element about the 1911 as well. There's something about the 1911s that have just made them, even though they are, in comparison to a lot of guns, they are very, very old. They've been around for a long, long time. But there's just, they will fit into any time scale. Not time scale, sorry, but time period, if you know what I mean. If you're thinking about likes of Call of Duty, for example, it's a modern computer game, pushing the boundaries of technology, and kind of, there's actually got to the stage now where it's kind of set in present times, but is it maybe a little bit in the future, looking at a little bit of advancement of technologies. Yeah, it still features a 1911, and it doesn't seem out of place. And like, take any movie just now, for example, where if your protagonist was to pull out a 1911, it wouldn't seem weird. You wouldn't be looking at it thinking, why have they got a 113-year-old pistol? You might look at it and think, yeah, it's quite an educated choice, or there might be something in the character's backstory that makes him favour the 1911, but you would nevertheless be looking at it thinking, why would somebody walk into a gunfight in 2024 with a 113-year-old pistol? You know what I mean? If you wouldn't automatically think that's weird, that's silly. Why have they got something like that? You would think there's a reason behind it. There's a character point, or is it an alluding to something in their backstory that makes them favour sort of a pistol like that. So yeah, so unlike a sort of, I don't know, like obviously likes of Glocks and 6 hours and stuff like that, they've got a very limited sort of time window, as it were, in regards to what will actually be accurate in a film or a TV programme. This, you could have anything set between sort of now and 113 years ago, and this could quite comfortably be featured in it without anybody going, oh, well, that's not accurate because that's only 20 years old. No, this thing's been round the block more than plenty of times, and it would fit in. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I particularly like the 1911. So again, from an airsofting point of view, if you're into, or you're creating a bit of a sort of loadout or anything like that, or so you wouldn't have to necessarily be looking at kind of, you know, like reenactment of the World War II. Or I'll need to look like a soldier from World War II to carry a 1911. No, you could look like a soldier from any time frame, from any combat field, whether it be American, British, private contractors. It's kind of like, you could carry this with an AK and pretend to be some sort of like jungle guerrilla fighter, and it wouldn't look out of place. Likewise, you could carry that with an MP7 and be some sort of hostage rescue element or whatever, and it wouldn't look out of place. It just fits in. It is utterly timeless, and that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love it. So, on that, the 1911, probably the most iconic arm in airsoft. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you again sometime soon on the next video. Feel free to like and subscribe, and catch you again.